Mr. Vice President, it is so nice to see you here in Kyiv. I know you met with President Zelensky today. You were in Bucha, you were in Irpin. Your fellow Republican presidential candidates, meantime, are in early primary states. They're holding fundraisers. Why does it matter to you to be here?
America's the leader of the free world. We're the arsenal of democracy. And from the very moment that Russia engaged in this unprovoked act of aggression, invading a neighboring country, I've strongly supported American efforts to give the Ukrainian fighters what they need to fight and win. And I must tell you, traveling across those battlefields today, meeting with soldiers, meeting with families, meeting with President Zelensky, and then seeing the division that we're seeing in Russia over the last week, I'm more convinced than ever that the support that the American people have provided, the free world has provided, is making it possible for Ukraine to reclaim their sovereignty, reclaim their territory, and do a great service to peace in the world. Look, I think that that repelling Russian aggression is not just in the interest of people here in Kyiv and in Ukraine. I think it's in our national interest. Because
America's.
I think it's in the interest of the United States of America and free countries around the world. Because by giving Ukraine what they need to repel the Russian invasion, we're not only going to send a message to Russia that their efforts to redraw international lines by force will not be tolerated, but other nations like China that's continuing to engage in menacing military actions across the Asia-Pacific will get the message that the free world will stand together. And precisely as we've done here, and watching the courageous fighters here in Ukraine today, it's been deeply inspiring.
We've just returned from the front lines in southern Ukraine, and we saw the troops living camouflaged in the woods. Literally every woods, right. And then there'd be a farm field, right? But in that strip of woods, they're camouflaged, they're heavy equipment, and they're living there full time, the Ukrainian troops. They're dealing with just fields littered with mines, right. and grenades where there are these little tiny wires that no one would see, littering the woods. Do you see an end in sight to a war like this?
I do. And when I met with President Zelensky today, he said that after a slow start this spring, largely owing to a very rainy season, that they've been seeing in recent weeks a steady advance against those Russian lines. And I have to tell you, remember wars are fought with soldiers, with munitions, and with morale. Yeah. And what I'm sure you saw on the front lines today, and what I witnessed talking not only to the leadership of this country, but to rank and file soldiers, was a genuine spirit. They see the progress. They see the fight they've put up. I mean, it's amazing to think. Erin, Russia went from having the second most powerful military in the world to having the second most powerful military in Ukraine. I mean, Ukrainian fighters have demonstrated their toughness, equipped so well by the United States and other allies that we've marshaled some 50 countries around the world. But I think the morale here in Ukraine, the progress that I heard about from President Zelensky today, and the division that we're seeing, the leader of the Wagner group literally marching on Moscow and now being exiled to Belarus, and Vladimir Putin literally flying troops from those front lines back to Moscow to reinforce. I mean, that's what happens when you engage in an unprovoked act of naked aggression against your neighbor. Innocent lives are lost, your soldiers' lives are lost, and you only sow division in your country. That's what's happening in Russia today, and the morale that you saw today on those front lines, I think is going to carry them forward to victory.
You mentioned Putin, and of course you've met him. You dealt with him when you were vice president. Do you think he has full command of his military right now?
I think it's an open question. It is. Now, the Wagner group is a specialty group we have some familiarity with. American forces encountered the Wagner group in Syria back in 2018 when they moved against our forces. And after being warned multiple times, the order was given and we took them out without one American casualty. But they are understood to be some of the most elite forces in Russia. Now they've been dispersed. They're being invited back into the military. But I did hear today that they are decamping in Belarus along with their leader, who's now in exile. And I must just tell you that we don't know what we don't know. about what's happening in Russia, but that's always true about Russia and about Vladimir Putin. But what I do know, being here in Ukraine today, is the resolve of Ukrainians, from President Zelensky down to that mother that I met in Irpin, whose home had been rebuilt. She was there when the rockets landed. She lost a nephew in the attack, but she never left. She rebuilt her home, and she and the Ukrainian people are fighting for their freedom, and with the support of the free world, with America as a leader of the free world, I know they can win.
So there are a lot of reports, and as you point out, we don't know what we don't know about what's going on in Moscow. That is normal, but we don't know. But there are reports about what top Putin inner circle members knew and did regarding Prigozhin's attempted rebellion. Do you think it's possible that Prigozhin had inside help from key members of Putin's inner circle?
I just wouldn't doubt it, but I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
I mean, look. To hear the way Prigozhin is speaking about this, and talking about how the children of the elites in Moscow are putting cream on their face while the sons of the people are dying in Ukraine, suggests to me that something is afoot in Russia that sees that not only was this an unjustified war. Remember, when Vladimir Putin launched this invasion of Ukraine, he said it'd be over in a week. But he underestimated the Ukrainian military, and candidly, he underestimated the resolve of the free world. But I have to believe in my heart of hearts that there are good and decent people among the populace in Russia who are getting fed up with this failed invasion, with the loss of life. And my hope is that that's actually reached all the way into the highest levels of government as well.
And to that point, the foreign minister here in Ukraine earlier this week told me, and his quote was, "Prigozhin is just the first one who dared, but I have no doubts that others will follow." Do you think that's what the U.S. should be prepared for? A Russia without Putin? Is his power waning?
Well, I think the United States should continue to be prepared to provide the courageous military here in Ukraine with the resources they need to fight and win. But I will say to you, Erin, while I strongly support American involvement here, I heard again today frustration about how slow the Biden administration has been in providing that military support. 33 Abrams tanks were pledged in January, and now they're being told that they won't be here till September. They've now authorized allowing people to be trained in F-16s, but the United States continues to hold back on allowing...
The minister said they're not going to get them, he doesn't think, till the beginning of next year.
Well, what good does that do? My hope is that this war is over by the beginning of next year.
So you think the aid needs to come faster?
Look, I want to say very sincerely, President Biden said in his last State of the Union address that we're there as long as it takes. I think it shouldn't take that long. We're the most powerful nation on earth. We have the most powerful military on earth. And we ought to be providing them with the tanks, with the missiles, with the aircraft, and what the Ukrainian soldiers have proved, those soldiers that you saw on the front line today.
Yes.
You give them the means to fight the Russians, they're going to fight them, defeat them, and they're going to win a victory not just for Ukraine, but they're going to win a victory for the free world, and America and nations across the globe will be more secure as a result.
And you're clear on F-16s where you stand, sooner rather than later, but also you mentioned missiles, ATACMS, #1 on the wish list here. You think that should be now? I
do. I heard about the need for more mortar shells. I mean, not getting into the technical part of it, but they need more ammunition, and I think it's imperative that we continue to provide that. Look, we should never send American forces into this fight. The war here in Ukraine is not our war, but freedom is our fight. And since the days of the Reagan administration, America's always taken the position that if you're willing to fight America's enemies on your soil, we'll give you the means to fight them there so we don't have to fight them here. That's what this has been about from the very beginning. I know there's debate, both in my party and around the country, about American involvement here, but I really believe that the majority of the American people understand that we are the leader of the free world, and standing for freedom and supporting those that are fighting for their freedom is always the American cause.
All of this in the context of course, the election and your race for the White House. We have obtained here at CNN the audio tape of former President Trump talking about classified documents found at Mar-a-Lago this week. Here's what he said.
I just found, isn't that amazing? This totally wins my case, you know. Except it is like highly confidential, secret. This is secret information. See, as president, I could have done less about it. Now I can't, but this is classic.
So this tape relates to just one of the allegations, right, in the indictment that says that Trump not only obstructed, but also justice, but that he also disseminated classified information. Are you comfortable with his behavior as you know it, as you hear it on that tape?
Well, what I can tell you, Erin, is that handling classified material is a very serious matter. The allegations in the indictment against the former president are serious, but he does deserve his day in court.
Yes.
This shouldn't be litigated
No.
in the media. It should be litigated in a court of law. The president's entitled to bring his defense. I want to let that process work out. Everybody's entitled to a presumption of innocence, so we'll stand on that presumption of innocence. But I don't want to diminish the seriousness of these allegations or diminish the former president's right to defend himself.
All right, Mr. Vice President, thank you very much for your time here in Kyiv.
Thank you, Erin. It's good to see you here.
All right.